Americans are sicker than ever. A food industry whistleblower who says that what we're eating is addictive and dangerous, and it's that way on purpose.
These are science experiments engineered to hijack our brain to make us want more.
I've been bullied about my weight since I was 11.
If this had been around when I was a teenager, it could have completely changed my life.
My goal is to empower you. Americans are sicker than ever, and there's a growing body of evidence that proves it. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, a recent study showed that the U.S. has the highest rate of obesity and the highest rate of multiple chronic health conditions out of all 38 developed countries they examined. This is the kind of thing no one else is talking about, and your life could literally depend on it. Now, tonight, I've put together portions of interviews that you need to see. My goal is to empower you. Let's start with a real wake-up call. You're about to meet a food industry whistleblower who says that what we're eating is addictive and dangerous, and it's that way on purpose.
We have an addiction crisis in America when it comes to food, and that's very profitable. I was a consultant for Big Food. There was a very clear objective. They want to make cheap, addictive food. Almost every single chronic condition that is shortening and torturing American life is tied to food. This is obviously a disaster for American health, but for the food companies, it's very profitable. Ultra-processed food is now 70% of our diet. Like, the food is literally weaponized with sugar, seed oils, highly processed grains. It's happening in the food industry is not a free market, it's a rigged market. Working for the food industry, I helped pay off regulators, pay off the media itself to run stories about how ultra-processed food is healthy, paid off lawmakers, paid off researchers. Coca-Cola pays the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Diabetes Association, the American Cancer Society. We did that in spades, millions of dollars to groups that would do that for us. So we just went down the list of institutions Americans trust and tried to get them money. That was my job. Humans are born with an innate sense of what's good for us, and that is being taken away by the food industry.
Callie Means is co-founder of TrueMed and co-author of Good Energy, which unpacks the incentives of our broken food system and provides a path forward. Kelly, thank you for being here and talking about this.
Thank you.
You've been on the dark side. You say it's the devil's bargain. What do you mean?
There's a 3-step playbook. Working for the food companies, they hired all the scientists in the 1980s from the tobacco companies. The tobacco companies, as smoking went down, actually started buying Nabisco and Kraft and shifting their scientists over. The key thing that the food companies know is that ultra-processed food, which is now up to 70% of our diet, is a science experiment. They're hijacking our evolutionary biology, and they're making the food addictive. And working for the food companies, the first part of the devil bargain is making that food normalized. So we paid the USDA advisors. 95% of the folks that make our nutrition guidelines are directly paid for by food companies. That means the USDA recommends added sugar for 2-year-olds. They say up to 10% of a 2-year-old's diet should be added sugar. We pay the lawmakers themselves. We pay the regulatory agencies. Literally, the American Diabetes Association, which sets the standard of care for diabetes, accepts money from Coca-Cola. So we normalize this addiction crisis. When you do a brain scan of a person eating ultra-processed food, it fits all the criteria for addiction, and we've gotten people addicted.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're saying that the major beverage companies, food companies, all of them, are bribing the scientists, bribing the regulatory agencies to endorse their formulas, their ingredients for food, to say that they're good, say that they're okay. And in fact, those ingredients are meant to addict people to the foods that they're selling.
It's the express purpose. I was shocked as a junior employee to see a list of names of professors from Harvard, from Tufts Nutrition School, from Stanford. And as a junior employee working for the food companies as a consultant, I steered money to those schools. The food industry funds nutrition research in this country 11 times more than the NIH. You are loath to find a nutrition researcher who's not directly paid with a direct consulting agreements bribes and their research is predominantly funded by the food industry. I can tell you from working for this industry that that's not out of a philanthropic goodwill for unbiased research. The food industry is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on nutrition research to enhance their bottom line. It's to normalize these addictive foods.
Okay, so you say added sugar for 2-year-olds. So these cereals that they might eat that have all the cartoons on the front of them and that sort of thing, you're talking about the same mantra for a drug dealer.
The biggest drug addiction crisis and drug issue in the country by far is the ultra-processed food industry. And you're hitting on the second aspect of this devil's bargain. Food and ultra-processed food is causing absolute devastation in America. 9 of the 10 leading causes of death are foodborne illnesses. If you take down ultra-processed food, you are eliminating diabetes, you're eliminating heart disease, you're putting a stab to the heart of cancer, many forms of cancer are metabolic related. Even Alzheimer's is now called type 3 diabetes. It's so closely related to our diet. Dr. Phil, the reason I'm speaking out is because a lot of us are parents, and I have a small child, and children are running into an absolute buzzsaw. We're so metabolically dysfunctional as adults that children are now developing prediabetes and metabolic dysfunction in utero. And kids now, 50% of teens are overweight or obese, 25% of teens have fatty liver disease. That's tied to the mental health epidemic where 40% of high school seniors have a mental health disorder. We're poisoning our kids, and it's the biggest issue in the country.
Okay, so you're talking about sugar, obviously. That's the white devil, right? All right, what else are you talking about?
I call it the unholy trinity of ingredients in ultra-processed food. You've got added sugar, you've got seed oils, you've got highly processed grains. All 3 ingredients are essentially invented just 100 years ago and were not evolutionarily made to handle.
At one time, they were proposing a tax on sugar, and you're saying they bribed organizations to fight against that and get it defeated.
Yeah, this is the third step. So we're getting really sick because of ultra-processed food, and then the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, which profits from being sick, absolutely rigs the debate to make this normalized and obfuscate the problem and frankly blame the American people instead of the system itself. So we at Coke paid the NAACP, prominent civil rights groups, to say it was racist to take away food stamp funding from Coca-Cola. Today, the top item purchased on food stamps is sugary beverages.
So you're saying Coca-Cola went and paid the NAACP to call anybody racist that was resisting the sugar tax?
This was reported in the New York Times and throughout the media. The NAACP, after accepting millions of dollars from Coke when I was working for them in 2010, 2011, called anyone who questioned the idea of taking food stamp funding away from Coke racist, saying that lower income kids, really enjoyed their soda and it was a personal choice issue.
Okay. Coming up, a fitness coach who believes his favorite soda is keeping him healthy. We'll talk to him next, and curious to hear what you have to say about that.
This is a Mexican Coca-Cola. The last warning label down here says evitar en niños, which means avoid in children. So they're telling you avoid this drink in children. Looking at this and just mentally, I'm like, I want to drink this so badly. It is an addiction, and people need to take that seriously, up there with the drug addiction, with alcohol addiction. You wouldn't put an alcoholic beverage in front of somebody who struggled with alcoholism or anything like that.
My next guest, Matt, says he gave up regular soda for diet soda and believes it has great health benefits.
I've been training in the gym for a very long time, and Diet Coke is a huge part of my life. I consume, give or take, a gallon of Diet Coke a day. When I wake up, most people go for their morning coffee, but I literally run to my local self-serve fountain and just run for a diet soda. So when I was younger, I became very overweight because I drank regular Coke so much. It became addicting. I made the switch to Diet Coke and eventually started improving my other habits, and the synergy of those two things dramatically improved my health. The reality is there is virtually zero evidence that diet soda of any kind can cause harm to you, and the benefits on its usefulness outweigh by far any of the risks. Some of the benefits of Diet Coke and diet soda in general are just increased feelings of satiety. And the reality is the benefit in the feeling of fullness you get between meals and with meals by doing that dramatically outweighs the tiny little bit of artificial sweetener you might be consuming. Diet Coke is such a useful tool because it allows you to limit your cravings. The amount of times I've sat there and said, you know what, I'll have something sugary after I drink this Diet Coke. And I find that once I drink it, the urge to go gorge on candy or cookies or cake is completely gone. I will probably drink Diet Coke for the rest of my life.
Okay, how much are you drinking a day?
I really do drink a gallon a day of diet soda.
Really?
Yes. They know me as the Diet Coke guy in restaurants I go to, local restaurants, and they bring me 2 before I even sit down.
And you think this is good for you?
Actually, yes. I was formerly overweight. I was 5'5", 170 pounds when I was younger, and I was around 14, 15. And as I got older, I managed to lose around 35 pounds from improving my lifestyle habits. And one of the main ways I've done that is through limiting my cravings, my overeating. So I'm using diet soda as a tool to help me alter my eating habits. And there is a lot of research. They have a study here where 18.65% more people in a group that substituted diet soda for water lost at least 5% of their body weight.
So you think it's healthy?
Ultimately, yes. In combination with water, yes.
Your ear just fell off. No, I'm just kidding. What do you think about him drinking a gallon of diet soda?
I looked at that study, and on the study, it's funded by Coca-Cola. And I just cannot express this. I cannot express this enough. Nutrition research is propaganda and public relations for processed food. There is not a lobbying firm for broccoli. There's not a lobbying firm for water.
We were looking at these studies that you gave us.
Yes.
And there's a long list of people that fund and support those studies. General Mills, Kellogg, PepsiCo, Quaker Oats, International Sweeteners Association, Nestle. They are funded, as you say, by the people that are selling you what they're testing. If you were buying a used car
Yes.
and you wanted to have it checked out, would you have it checked out by the mechanic that had it for sale?
Definitely not. Ultimately, reducing obesity, reducing your calorie intake is so important. And that's what diet soda has allowed me to do personally and allows some other people to do as well.
I think that's great for you personally. The core criminal situation happening is that the pharma and healthcare industry is not standing up against our consumption of these Franken foods. It's because every single institution of healthcare makes money when
You
we're
called them
sicker.
what foods?
Ultra-processed food, Franken foods.
What are Franken foods?
Franken foods are like Frankenstein's lab. You're just putting a bunch of ingredients together. There's a reason there's all those ingredients on the label that you don't understand. These are thousands of chemicals, even in Diet Coke, that the food industry's lobbied for, many of which are banned in every other country. The criminal aspect here, Dr. Phil, is that the healthcare industry should be speaking out, but they're also taking money from the food industry and complicit in this because they make money when we get sick.
Now, Kelsey says she's binge eating as a coping mechanism.
I've been struggling with food for 7 years now. The type of food that I normally binge on is more processed and like fast food and takeout. I'm very addicted to donuts. I try really hard to like control it. McDonald's is one of my go-tos. So I get like a Big Mac meal, large, so a large fry, large Sprite, Big Mac, 10-piece chicken nugget, McChicken, a McFlurry. It just makes me feel really bad and, you know, I want to stop. And sometimes I do feel like, am I going to always, you know, like struggle with this?
What do you think about the fact that Kelly is saying that these foods that you have trouble putting down, staying away from, that you're binging on, are in fact scientifically designed to create just that effect on you?
I think it's been really eye-opening just hearing all of this.
And if in fact, this entire food complex, this entire beverage complex has been exploiting you by putting ingredients in there that makes your brain signal you that you need to keep doing this and keep doing this and keep doing this to get a high, to get satisfaction, to get satiety, then you've been victimized in part by that.
Yeah.
Fair statement?
100% fair. I just want to thank you for having the courage to speak out. There is a systemic poisoning happening, and we have to realize that.
Well, how did you justify it to yourself when you were out bribing agencies and scientists?
Great question. Nobody behind closed doors is saying that they're evil or saying stuff like that. You know, it's about protecting lower income folks' ability to get their calories, their cheap calories. You know, for the pharmaceutical industry, which is not stopping this epidemic of foodborne illnesses, but profiting from it. It's, you know, we need to get people access to drugs. You can always justify things. And that is absolutely what's happening in DC and in these companies.
Well, you had to know. I mean, if you're taking money to the NAACP to call people racist for talking about a tax, or you're carrying money to scientists somewhere for a food company, they didn't ask you to do that on the town square.
It is impossible to explain to you how normalized things are. I think we all work for large companies. Many of us work for the pharmaceutical industry. Many friends from Harvard Business School go into the pharmaceutical industry, work for Coke, work for Pepsi. These companies are doing evil, and there is an amazing invisible hand that's convincing a lot of good people to do bad things. And I will say, being in those rooms at the NAACP, we were talking about protecting choice for lower income kids. I did not even fully realize how evil what we were doing was.
So you drank the addictive Kool-Aid.
100%. And that's, I think, what's happening systemically. Healthcare is the largest and fastest growing industry in the country. And the moment you are empowered, the moment a child learns metabolically healthy habits and doesn't go on Ozempic, doesn't go on statins, doesn't go on SSRIs, doesn't go on metformin, which is being prescribed like candy in high schools right now, the moment that happens and they wake up, that's not a profitable patient. And there is trillions of dollars of incentives right now to prevent us from waking up.
Well, I'm all about waking up. Coming up, what sugar does to your brain that may shock you. I've got an expert here that's going to tell this to us in terms we can understand. We'll be right back.
If you're addicted to sugar, it's sort of like you're in an abusive relationship. Sugar is addictive, it's pro-inflammatory, it steals, hijacks your brain to need it in order for you to feel normal. I want you to begin to think of it as the enemy. It's really one of the weapons of mass destruction when it comes to your health. If you're looking at that cupcake and go, oh, I wish I had it, we got to work on your mindset.
That was Dr. Daniel Amen. He's an award-winning researcher and brain imaging pioneer with the world's largest database of brain scans for psychiatry, totaling more than 250,000 SPECT scans on patients from 155 countries. Now, Dr. Amen says that on average, Americans consume 10 times more sugar than the lowest reasonable recommended intake. This is a dangerous chemical with regard to brain functioning, certainly in excessive amounts. True?
Absolutely. And it's pro-inflammatory, and we think chronic inflammation is a major cause of cancer, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, and depression. It's addictive. In some studies with rats, more addictive than cocaine. And once you start, you can't stop. And so it hijacks your pleasure centers. And if you wear out the pleasure centers in your brain, now you're not only at risk for addiction, you're at risk for depression.
Kelsey went to Amen Clinics for a brain scan before this episode, and she's given us permission to share those results. What did you find?
So if you look at the left image, there's a dent at the top of her brain, which is probably one of the physical accidents. But we also see low activity in the front part of the brain. And that's so important because the prefrontal cortex is involved with things like forethought, judgment, impulse control, organization, planning, empathy. And yours is sleepy, again, I think, from the trauma, the physical trauma. And then if
you've had some car wrecks, correct?
Yes.
And if you asked me, you said, hey, Daniel, what's the single most important thing you've learned from 250,000 scans? Mild traumatic brain injury ruins people's lives, and nobody knows about it because psychiatrists are the only medical doctors who never look at the organ they treat. I mean, think about that. If we look at the image on the right, compared to healthy, Your emotional brain looks like a diamond, and the arrow's pointing to the top of the diamond. That goes with emotional trauma. And so the goal is calm down the cingulate, pop up your frontal lobes, and then love your brain. So whenever you go to make a decision, just ask yourself this one question. This is good for my brain or bad for it, right?
Yeah, and you're ingesting a lot of sugar, which is not loving your brain, right?
It's not loving your brain. It's hating your brain.
We've got a display. Let's bring this out and we'll take a look at it right quick. Why don't we get up and go to this so you can tell us what we're looking at here. This is the amount of sugar that most people would normally be expected to ingest throughout the day.
Right.
This is what most people do ingest on average throughout the day.
Right. 10 times what's actually recommended.
Yeah, okay. And this is what people typically ingest in a month.
Correct.
Okay. Now, this is just a regular can of soda, and it is almost a daily's recommended. This is a 20 ounce.
22 ounce.
And that exceeds the daily amount. This is just what they're drinking. This doesn't have anything to do with what they're eating, right?
And there are 40 different names for sugar. So when people read the label, they're meant to confuse you. So high fructose corn syrup, people go, oh, probably shouldn't have that. But fruit nectar, it's like, oh, well, that sounds good for me.
These are just all other names for sugar, right?
Other names for sugar. And that's why we are fatter and sicker than we've ever been in human history.
That's why you say an orange is okay, orange juice, not okay.
Whenever you unwrap sugar from its fiber source, it turns toxic in your body.
Now, is that shocking or what? I hope that was a real wake-up call for all of you at home. It certainly is for me. You know, it's baffling that no one else seems to be talking about this. But hey, that's what makes Dr. Phil's Merit TV important and different. Coming up next, you're going to meet two moms and their teens who are struggling with obesity. Both of these families have made a controversial decision. As you watch, ask yourself, what would you do in a similar situation? Maybe you are in a similar situation. Now, Susie and her 14-year-old son both had a reality check when they were each pushing over 300 pounds. Susie says she found a miracle way to lose weight, and now she wants her son to have a shot to thinness as well.
I'm here to share my weight loss journey using doctor-prescribed GLP-1 medication and taking my son Jeremiah, who's 14, on the same journey.
It's always been really difficult for me to lose weight. I've never been into sports. I didn't really have any interest in doing football, soccer, anything like that. I tried doing keto and it just wasn't for me. Too many limitations.
When the pandemic came, Jeremiah was gaining so much weight. He started turning to emotional eating as well.
I was really bored and I feel like it was a lot of just binge eating. I was just downing a bag of chips and I wouldn't even notice. My dad showed concern for it. He would go into my room and just see all these packages everywhere. I would say I had a bit of a depression room. It was always dark in there. I just felt numb whenever I was emotionally eating. The only thing that was on my mind was food. At my heaviest, I was probably around like 350. That's whenever my mom came to me about the shots and how it was similar to this drug I had been seeing all over TikTok. And so I was really interested. And the first week, I noticed instant results. I was not hungry for probably like the first 3 days. At one point, I was losing a pound a day. The next dosage wasn't available. We couldn't get our hands on it. I've gained like 5 pounds back. It's difficult because I'm hungry kind of like all the time. And it's okay to be hungry, but it's not okay to starve. And I just kind of don't know the difference between the two because I don't know if I'm eating too much or too little. Once I get the shot again, I think it'll be smooth sailing.
Well, welcome to you both.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Phil.
What made you realize that you had to take control of your weight, that you really wanted to make a change?
A doctor visit. When they're telling you you can die of this weight that you have on your body, that is something that I can control, right? So I was told that I was borderline diabetic and that I was potentially going to die of a stroke if I didn't lower my blood pressure. So that was my moment. Like, my children need me and I need to do something to change and lower my body weight.
Okay. And Jeremiah, do you feel like your current weight is a problem to you in the way you live your life, feel about things, choose activities?
I would say yes and no. Emotionally, I really don't feel like it's affected me a bunch, but I feel like physically, you know, just different things, like being on a plane, it's a little bit like tighter, and, you know, like finding clothes, it's a little bit harder than for people who aren't obese and, you know, heavier. So I feel like it's a give and take, yes and no.
You say the quarantine was hard for you.
Yeah.
How so?
There was nobody to keep me accountable. There was nobody there watching me. And I feel like before, even though I was heavier, I feel like I gained a lot of weight just emotionally eating all the time during quarantine.
Your self-image should not go up when your weight is where you want it to be and down when it's not. Those things should not vary together. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I agree.
It's a big deal, and I'm going to talk about that a lot. Coming up, Susie says she went to social media for advice on the shot. We'll talk about the shot when we come back. Susie says the semaglutide shot has been a miracle for her struggles with food and weight. In 10 months, she said she lost nearly 40 pounds. Now, Susie says her 14-year-old son, Jeremiah, is following in her footsteps, struggling with his weight. She says the pandemic and social media just didn't really help.
I am on TikTok avidly. I love just scrolling on my For You page. And of course, I do see those mukbangs. Mukbang, it was invented in Korea, and it's pretty much somebody recording themselves eating a good amount of food. And just eating in front of a camera, talking, consuming all of that, it makes you want to eat it. This is the last bite of the burger.
Social media has made an impact on Jeremiah's life. They're called influencers for a reason. And so when you find something that interests you, you're gonna go down a deep rabbit hole and spend hours and hours scrolling. Again, you're in a pandemic. TikTok is taking off. The children's eating habits definitely changed. Oh, let's make the frothy coffee. Oh, I just saw this recipe on, you know, how to bake a cake from a mug in the microwave. Like, there was one of the chicharron challenge where you deep fry a pork belly and you dip it into guacamole. When you are trying out a recipe on the internet, on social media, that doesn't give you the calories. He definitely needs nutrition. I don't think he has the mental maturity to understand what it can do to your body.
Okay, so Susie, what's your journey been like on this?
I take these weekly shots and it helps me feel full, and it gives me the control that I need to make the right choices of the foods that I should be eating.
Okay. And you've tried to lose that 40 pounds for how long before?
I've been trying to lose this 40 pounds since the last 3 years. I started a new job and I was back at a heavy weight, and I knew that eventually I was going to meet these people in person. And, you know, you can only look so beautiful and thin behind a Zoom. So I tried to, you know, follow trainers on the internet. I tried to try different diets, but it just wasn't sustainable for me, and I didn't feel motivated. I lost my sense of community.
Okay. Zoom doesn't have filters like...
Yes, you can do that.
It does?
Yes, it does. Yeah, it does. They could.
That's what I should do. Look like I have a cat on my head. So it's worked for you. Have there been downsides to it?
There are some side effects where when you first start taking it, you feel tired, a little bit of nausea. So that's really the only thing that I went through.
Why do you feel like your son needs to be on the same thing?
I'm worried about his health. He's a very confident person, and I've always instilled in that. Don't worry about what people think about you, but I want him to be a healthier version of himself so that he can achieve the things that he wants to do in life.
Have you started taking the medication?
I had the medication for about a month, and it was really successful, but we could not get the next dosage for it since it's at such a high demand.
Jeremiah, you say having less hunger makes you feel more in control. Have you done other things? Have you taken your own destiny in your hands and worked hard and gotten out on the track, broken a sweat, put together a healthy eating program?
Yeah, I wouldn't have breakfast. I would do intermittent fasting, and then I would go for a 3-mile walk, which only took like around an hour, then start my school, and then I would have like a salad or a sandwich for lunch, and then have like pretty much whatever I wanted for dinner and save my calories for dinner.
Yeah, you don't want to go on a diet.
No.
Right?
No.
You want to get a lifestyle that you can sustain across time.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there's no way to do this in a sustainable way without working hard. I mean, you get that, right?
Yeah.
Coming up, we're going to meet a mother who lost over 100 pounds on this injection, semaglutide. So she decided to put her 15-year-old daughter on it too. We're going to meet them next and see what they have to say. According to the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, girls as young as 6 years old start to worry about their weight. 6 years old. And by 14 years old, 60 to 70% are trying to lose weight. Now, risk of developing an eating disorder is 18 times greater than their non-dieting peers. Now, hear what I just said. 18 times greater. Now, Dina says that she's been overweight since she was 10 years old. It's a battle she's fought all of her life until she found the semaglutide medication, where she's now lost 100 pounds. So she decided to put her 15-year-old daughter on it as well.
I started taking GLP-1 medications October 31st of 2022. And I went from 366 pounds, and I just weighed in today at 229 pounds. I have tried so many different methods as far as losing weight. However, the thing that's different with the GLP-1 medication is up here. I'm not thinking about food all the time. My daughter Demi has seen me on my journey with the GLP-1 medication, and when they come out on the market for 12 to 18-year-olds, she asked me what I thought about her starting her own journey.
Ready?
My first memory of struggling with my weight is the summer after 6th grade. I was hungry a lot, and I would constantly eat chips, and I gained 20 pounds.
She started out at 198 pounds, and she's down to 140 pounds.
First one, how do you feel?
It was kind of scary because I didn't know how to do it. At the end of the first month, I'd probably lost a total of 10 pounds. This medicine has not only helped me want to live my life, but it's also made it a lot easier to.
I have seen my daughter's journey cause her to blossom in so many ways. What parent does not want their child to just flourish and blossom in life?
Well, thank both of you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
This has been a lifelong issue, right?
Absolutely.
And you've seen doctors about this.
Yes. A lot of times doctors in the past have said diet and exercise, calories in, calories out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that my whole entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Calories in, calories out.
Mm-hmm.
And even gone to the extremes of having a weight loss surgery 20-some years ago. The GLP-1 medication has been a game changer completely. It's like nothing I have ever experienced in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time in my 51 years of life, I feel like, for a lack of words, a normal person around food.
Did this affect how you felt about yourself?
Yes, a lot.
What did you say to yourself?
I felt just disgusted by my body. I remember there would be times I would just stand in the mirror and look at myself and hold the extra weight that I had, and I would just cry because I hated who I saw. And that led to me having really bad mental health issues, even to the point where I started self-harming.
Mm-hmm. You say that your pediatrician is hesitant to prescribe the meds that you're wanting to do. They finally relented, but were hesitant?
Yes, at first, she really wasn't on board with doing it. And I said, well, doctor, first off, you prescribed it to me. So obviously, you're on board with the medication to begin with. And I realized that she's your first teenager that you're gonna be prescribing it to. And if I didn't think it was something that would benefit my child, or if it was something that would be harmful to my child, I would not ask you to prescribe this to her in the first place. Mm-hmm. And if this was something that had been around when I was a teenager, it could have completely changed my life. Mm-hmm. And I said, so how about we come up with a game plan and allow her to try it for 3 months, and between myself and Demi and you as her doctor, we work for 3 months to see what type of progress she can make. Mm-hmm. And that's where we started her journey.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Jamie Seaman is here, and I want to ask the audience here, I want you guys to take a poll. So grab your devices. Would you put your obese child on a prescription medication for weight loss? Hit 1 for yes, 2 for no. 1 for yes, 2 for no. All right, the results are in. 58.9 say no, 41.1 say yes. Doctor, what's your response?
We really are focusing on the wrong thing. We're focusing on how fat people are, how obese people are, how much body fat they have, which is not what we should be focusing on. The problem that we have in America is we're overfed and we're undernourished, and we're not focusing on muscle and lean tissue. We're obese, we're inflamed, we have diabetes, but we're in an environment where there is a psychology behind it, and there's a social environment behind it and how we raise our children. So this is a difficult problem to tackle. Medication can be a tool, but it's not gonna solve the long-term crisis.
Doctor, what can Jeremiah do? What can his mom help him do to change his journey health-wise?
Yeah, I heard him talk about bits and pieces. He's trying to get out and walk more. He wants to move more. He has a little bit of a knowledge base as to how to fix this problem. But here's the trouble. We've really focused on move more, eat less. Calories in, calories out. It's been said in this show a couple of times. The problem with that mentality is if I throw you, Dr. Phil, into a swimming pool and tell you not to drown, what if you can't swim? He doesn't have all of the tools and skills that he needs, and this is something that you have to cultivate, you have to practice on a daily basis. He needs mentors and role models in his life to show him how to do it. He's just a young boy. So we need to teach him what foods are actually nutritious, not about calories anymore. Now it's about nutrients. It's about prioritizing protein in his diet, because he's at an age where he needs to be building lean body mass. He needs to be building strong bones. But the other thing that he needs to do is he needs to get into the gym. He is strong and powerful and capable, and he is gonna get so much confidence. He's gonna gain so much confidence by seeing what his body can really do. I know he's never tried it, but sometimes I don't exercise to get better at exercise. I exercise to get better at life.
Jeremiah, how would you like it if Dr. Seaman was willing to help you and work with you to get on the right path?
I would really appreciate it. You know, she said that I'm strong, and, you know.
Yeah, his mama didn't raise a fool. And you are willing to work with him and help him, right?
I'm willing to work with both of you. I would love to stay in contact with you. I'd love to support you in any way that I can. I'm a mom of 3 daughters, and I know what world our kids are living in, and it's tough out there.
I want to thank Dr. Jamie Seaman, and thanks to all of my guests tonight. And thank you at home for watching, because here at Dr. Phil Primetime, we're going to continue to focus on the issues that we are all facing in our society. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Also, my book, We've Got Issues, How All Americans Can Stand Strong for Our Country's Soul and Sanity, is on sale now everywhere books are sold. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here.